Coming up next on Words and Numbers, a cornucopia of foolishness.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Antony.
And this is Words and Numbers.
Today we have with us our good friend and connoisseur of foolishness, Wes Westmoreland. He's a printer, entrepreneur, businessman, and a former state senator. So, Wes, we really should redo the opening because, everybody's going to hear Antony's stupid voice. So, from the top, hi, I'm James.
And I'm Wes.
And this is Words and Numbers. Well, Wes, you're here as the last-minute replacement, and the people probably know that I've been out traveling again, which means that I've been lost in various airports as a result of American Airlines, what's that technical term I'm looking for? F-ups that they routinely send my way. And before I even get started here, I want to point out that the last 14 flights that I have had with American Airlines have either been delayed or canceled. So when I flew back from Italy and they got me into O'Hare too late to make my connection, it really wasn't terribly surprising. What was surprising is that they decided I should have a 24-hour layover at O'Hare, which after multiple back and forth interactions with them, we got all the way down to a 14-hour delay at O'Hare, which, and people keep saying, James, why do you keep flying American Airlines? And that's a legitimate question. And I always give them the same answer. I live in Tucson, Arizona, and American Airlines has 22 flights a day out of Tucson. Delta, the queen of the skies, can get me to Atlanta twice a day. And yet, given that it's 1/11th the number of flights, I am now switching over to Delta, because if you're going to be late every single time or canceled every single time, 2 flights a day sounds kind of like a miracle. And I'm just going to do that. Now, I should mention that this is, in fact, the foolishness of the week, but as luck would have it, this week is so ridiculous that all we have are foolishnesses of the week, which is why Wes, the connoisseur of the foolishness, is here with us today. So in my various interactions with American Airlines, I let them know that they were going to be featured on Words and Numbers, a podcast with some 2 million downloads now, and they didn't even care. So they're going to get the foolishness this time, but we're going to address them in an entire episode in the not-too-distant future. And I repeatedly asked the nice people on the app to make available to me a vice president in charge of customer service, which they steadfastly refused to do. Wonder why. And if I can't find one, we'll just go ahead with that episode anyway. And this is mere foreshadowing to the drubbing they are going to take on that next episode. So with that finally off my rather bloated spleen after all of the difficulties, I should mention that every joint I have is either sprained or broken at this point from various problems along the way. So I'm especially cranky. But now I get to lean back and ask the connoisseur himself, what foolishness is new and exciting in your world this week, Wes?
Well, James, I thought this was the whole problem at first, but it was a United Airlines flight from Newark, New Jersey to Spain, made a U-turn on Saturday and had to return to New Jersey after several hours in the air over a potential security concern about a Bluetooth device. The air traffic control radioed, there's a security detail out here, someone with a Bluetooth speaker, they named a certain 4-letter word. So they have to inspect the whole aircraft, including the cargo area, and the passengers have to evacuate. That's why I thought of you, James. Fortunately, the four-letter word in question was bomb, and the device was only a teenager speaker. The flight reboarded and landed in Spain, only a 9.5-hour delay.
Only 9.5.
Yeah, but I thought that was when I first started that four-letter word turned the plane around. I thought, oh goodness, James is going to be stuck.
Well, I should tell you that one of my flights was delayed because a woman on the plane lost her ever-loving mind and started screaming for no reason. The flight crew sprung into action to get her to shut the hell up, which did not work. And when we finally landed, a medical crew had to come on and delayed us for about 45 minutes, which was, of course, just enough to make my connection all but impossible. So not every single thing is American Airlines' fault, just a 13 out of 14. And actually, this one's probably their fault, too, because they should have told her to just shut the hell up and maybe busted out the zip ties and the duct tape and called this one a day.
I'm just glad I've never traveled with you.
Antony said his life got considerably better when we stopped traveling together.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And I can understand it too. Well, I've got a number of foolish things that have been going on in my lengthy absence from the United States, and one of them came out just today. And I want to remind everybody, under the Biden administration and indeed under the Barack Obama administration, the criticisms flew that we were heading in a handcart bound for hell towards socialism. And, socialism, as far as I can tell, as far as the MAGA people are concerned, socialism seems to mean everything I don't like. And yet socialism has a very clear definition. It's state ownership of the means of production. And the means of production were not overtaken under the Obama administration. They were not overtaken under the Biden administration. Those two administrations, their flaws are legion, for they are many. I don't want to just let them off the hook. But what they were not was engaged in socialism. The Trump administration, on the other hand, has, as of today, I just read this in an article published by Cato, has taken an ownership interest in at least 30 American corporations. Now, that is state ownership of the means of production. So the Trump administration is engaged in socialism to a degree that no other administration ever has. Well, what on earth is going on with the GOP? I remember the good old days, Wes, and I'm sure you do too, given that we are of a similar vintage, and we are both, I think it's fair to say, Reagan Republicans.
Yeah.
I'm not a Republican anymore because there's no such thing as a Reagan Republican. And Reagan was once a Democrat, and he said he didn't leave the Democratic Party, it left him.
Right.
And I didn't leave the Republican Party, it left me. Because there's no such thing as the party of small government anymore. So here we have the GOP taking an ownership interest, literally socialism, in at least 30 corporations. What's going on?
With the perfect example of how this works, what the end game is. It's going to be failure.
Well, given what government can accomplish, yes. I once asked, I've said this before on the podcast, and maybe I'll just ask you and see if you have an answer. Whenever I did a public lecture, I used to ask a very simple question before I took question and answers. I said, before I do Q&A, I've got a Q for you. Can you name, and I want to leave the military out of this.
Okay.
Right, because that opens a can of worms I'm not ready to get into. But can you name a government program that came in at or under budget and achieved its stated goal?
Nope.
That's a harder question than it might seem to be.
I can't think of a single one, though.
And I couldn't either. And it's not for lack of thinking. And one day, this very old man, and he had to be well into his 90s, raised his hand. It was in Cleveland. I'll never forget it, because when you finally get an answer to a question you have long had, you tend to remember. And he raised his hand, and he said, "Young fella," which means I liked him immediately.
Yeah.
He said, "Young fella, there is an answer to your question, and it's the Hoover Dam." And I thought, hot damn, that's actually a really good answer.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know for a fact that it came in under budget, but it came in damn close to budget, so I'm willing to offer some grace around the edges. And it actually did do what it was supposed to do.
Well, the fact that there's one, certainly there's always an exception, right?
Yeah, but it was heartening to know that there was at least an answer to my question.
Yeah.
So I can find one government program that probably came in under budget and did, in fact, do what it was meant to do. Now, with the Trump administration taking over taking an ownership interest, and these are, I think, all minority interests. But they are significant voting interests, right? So they could tip the balance in a board of directors vote, which could tip the balance in a business plan vote, these sorts of things moving forward. I wouldn't want to invest in any of these companies if my life depended on it.
Not in the long term, but in the short term, you can't help but wonder about the government contracts many of these companies are going to get.
Well, there's that, right? And we are left with the reality that government entities rarely go out of business. So there's that. But what are the odds that innovation will come from these companies? And innovation drives profits.
Right. Yeah, very little chance.
I think that's probably right. So I'm kind of horrified by what I'm seeing on the part of the government, but I'm used to being horrified by what I see on the part of the government. What I'm not used to seeing is the apologetics from the MAGA faithful. Because if you had told them that Joe Biden had done this, they would have lost their minds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, before we go on to the next one, I want to correct you. I don't get this chance very often.
Here we go.
Here we go. Last week's Foolishness, you were explaining about the goldfish and the restaurant window and how they've been now determined to be sentient beings. So the goldfish have rights. What you neglected to mention was more about the restaurant. It was a sushi restaurant, James.
That's right. That's right. So they could have literally taken the goldfish out of the tank and served them for dinner.
Right.
Apparently the goldfish have rights, but the fish that they're serving up for dinner absolutely do not.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to correct that one for the record.
I'm gonna accept that correction because it's both correct and hilarious.
Yeah. I thought you'd like that one.
And look, you have two dogs and I have a dog. And it never occurs to me that dogs don't have rights of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
They're intelligent. We keep them as pets. When we hear that the Koreans eat them, we become horrified. And, we typically make the argument that this is because they're intelligent and lovable. Well, horses are intelligent and lovable. Pigs are intelligent and lovable. Pigs are more intelligent than dogs, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But bacon tastes so good.
It does.
So I think we've got a bit of a disconnect when it comes to extending rights to non-humans. We don't quite know where we fall into line.
Well, yes, but I'm pretty sure fish don't have them.
I'm absolutely certain fish don't have them. Who else is convinced? Many vegetarians who call themselves pescatarian. So they won't eat meat of any kind, but they'll sure as hell eat a fish.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But, I'm wondering where an intelligent man like you would come down on the extension of rights to intelligent sentient animals.
Well, I guess we've got to define that. My personal belief is that people are people and everything else are animals. We've got rights. We've got inherent rights. They're granted by our Creator. And certainly from a biblical view, we have a responsibility to care for the animals. And I think you're crossing the Rubicon if you're going to start giving animals some rights and other animals not rights, because there's always going to be somebody that shows up and says, well, my iguana has a right, just like your dog.
Sure, but if you decided tomorrow to beat your dogs to death in your front yard, you would expect a visit from the local constabulary.
Well, cruelty is completely different, I think.
Right.
So does the animal have the right to not, for us to not be, I don't know if that's a right. I think that's back a responsibility on our part to not be cruel.
Maybe. And look, I have a certain ambivalence here. I don't know what I think, because I would grant you the dog example in a nanosecond, and yet I eat chicken 4 times a week, and those come from family farm or from factory farms, which are clearly cruel. So I don't know. I'm just tossing it out there as one of those things that we're all, I think, of two minds on this. And I can appreciate and understand the vegetarian argument. I get it. I'm just not willing to live up to it.
I don't get the vegetarian argument, but that's all right. I respect people.
Yeah,
that's more steak for me.
I think that's right. And as we know how markets work, cheaper steak for you.
Yes.
So what else you got? There has been so much foolishness that I even hesitate to ask the question.
What else you got? I've had to narrow down. You remember Tampon Tim, Minnesota governor, former vice presidential candidate, right?
I do.
He's the one
Yes,
that
I do.
signed a law requiring free menstrual products, including pads and tampons, in all public schools, grades 4 through 12, male and female bathrooms. If that,
You never know when somebody's going to have an emergency, Wes.
well, it gets better. If that wasn't foolish enough, there's a new project that he's funded through the University of Minnesota's Eli Coleman Institute for Sexual and Gender Health that will go into effect later this year. They're called My Gender Dolls. The dolls have removable genitalia. The website, again taxpayer funded, says this is a new play-based therapeutic approach for trans and gender-diverse children ages 4 through 10.
All right, are you going to continue now, or should I just stop you right here?
I don't know what to say about this.
I do. I do. Because here's the thing. Sexuality is complicated business, and I don't want to make it seem like it isn't. Right? I've known people who have struggled with this for a long time, deciding, maybe the reality of their life is that they are not heterosexual, which puts them at odds with the vast majority of human beings, which definitionally makes their life a little difficult, if not a lot difficult. But when we get into bullshit like this, and we're talking about kids from 4 to 10 years old, what we're talking about are prepubescent children who have no idea what sexuality is, means, or will be. Now, you want to tell me you're 15 and you're a little confused? Well, congratulations. Everybody's confused about a lot of things at age 15.
Sure.
But if you are 4 and you have gender dysphoria, your mother has a problem. You don't.
I agree completely. But the taxpayers in Minnesota are supporting this, and I'm not exactly sure how the dolls work, but they have a website if you want to check it out. It's mygenderdolls.com. Very simple.
I suspect I will. And, I remember the good old days, Wes, when a man had the misfortune of losing his penis, it was life-altering. It was a life-altering accident that happened. Usually to do with alcohol and fireworks or a friend's handgun, right? Something like this. It wasn't the sterile theater of an operating room.
Right.
And now we have dolls. Why? Maybe we should go back to Barbie and Ken, which had absolutely no genitalia to speak of.
And didn't seem to be a problem.
No, but we all did make fun of Ken.
I never had dolls, James.
It shows that you have no real compassion. You're just a hard-edged man.
I guess.
I had G.I. Joes, which also had no genitalia.
But now this is another one. Talk about a man. At Orange County Fair this past week, that's in New York State, a married couple were performing their sharpshooter act. Now get this.
Oh, no.
The crossbow-wielding wife shoots at a target held by her husband.
Oh, no.
What could possibly go wrong there?
What could possibly go wrong? Was she angry with him at the moment?
Well, we don't know that. But the best part was the quote from the ringmaster after the fact. After the arrow was removed from her husband, the ringmaster stated, "No blood was leaking out. There was a little hole around where the arrow went in, kind of like getting your ears pierced. He'll need to heal before he can resume performing."
Well, why? I mean, if she's just going to shoot him again, it would seem that healing would be
You can't make this
incidental.
stuff up. And I just,
given
how
that
dumb is this guy to hold I mean, we trust our wives, but gosh.
I don't trust my wife that much.
No, I'm not going to get her crossbowed.
That seems to be prime getting even time for a wife.
What did he think was going to happen? And apparently does this
right.
routinely. It's their show.
Not only is it prime getting even time for the wife, there's an automatic get out of jail free card, right? Because she clearly didn't mean it, whether she did or not.
Yep.
Given that you've brought us to the great state of New York, the People's Republic of New York, where I once lived for 4 glorious tax-filled years, I want to bring us to the city of New York, where our good friend Kami Mamdani is at it again. And his latest is that he is signaling. Well, we should start with that grocery store that he's opening, because there's an amazing arbitrage opportunity here, and people are getting wise to it. He said they're going to sell a basket of items at a 30% discount to all the other stores in town. And a bunch of smart people have said, well, I'm going to go and buy them all and sell them at a 10% discount to all the stores in town, which I think is both predictable and brilliant. But not to be outdone with his own stupidity, he is now signaling that he is open, whatever that means, to slavery reparations on the part of the New York City government. Because slavery is such an omnipresent concern, Wes. There are no people who have ever been enslaved in the United States, let alone New York, and there are no people who have ever owned a slave in the United States, let alone New York. But the Democratic Socialists of America have an agenda, and we'll get to the rest of that agenda in a couple of minutes. And slavery reparations plays really well to their base. It has no basis in reality or common sense whatsoever. But when the Democratic Socialists of America hear the word reparations, they lose their minds. They start jumping up and down and clapping their hands. And this is one of the many reasons why they will never succeed past places like New York City.
Yep. I sure hope not.
But as luck would have it, the Republicans right now, and let's face it, the Republican Party has been shooting itself in the foot for the last year and a half, if not the last 12 years. But the last year and a half, the sum total of the present Trump administration, let's just say, hasn't gone well for Republicans. And yet they are at an 8% disadvantage to the Democrats. And the Democrats can't stop saying dopey shit. You would think that the Democrats would say something like, and if I were a Democratic strategist, I might say, look, fellas, this gender nonsense, how far did that get you in the last election? It got your asses kicked up one side and down the other because the American people have no use for this. 99.9% of the American people want to be left alone to live their lives according to what they understand to be very common sense mechanisms, right? They just want to go about their business and be left alone, pay whatever taxes they must, and not be scolded by the liberal elite.
Well, and Carville has essentially
exactly,
said that.
That's it. Yeah, no, James Carville has. The unfortunate thing with Carville is that none of the Democrats are taking him all that seriously anymore because he's a very old man. He's become extraordinarily cranky, and he was cranky to begin with. He's become extraordinarily cranky, and he only says things they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
But the Democrats are at an 8% positive run right now, which means they should blast through these midterms, winning seat after seat after seat. And the average out-of-party House game over the last 80, 100 years has been about 24 seats for the party out of power. So they should bet that they're going to win somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 28 seats in the House. Can they retake the Senate? Yeah, probably, but not to the degree they would need to make a critical difference.
Yeah,
but the House they could take.
If it wasn't for the Democrats, the Republicans would be doing a whole lot better.
That's right.
The Republicans are killing themselves.
They are, and the Democrats are starting to do the same now because they're listening very seriously to the Democratic Socialists. Right? That there are all kinds of rational Democrats that should be leading the charge right now. Two of them from my former state of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro on the one hand, the governor, and John Fetterman, the senator, on the other. And Fetterman has staked out that middle ground between the two parties that the vast majority of the American people find themselves in.
And I didn't see that one coming. Did you? When he was running?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. Not really. He was just a big, giant, crazy person who wore shorts to every event. Right?
Yeah.
And you think, what the hell's wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
But I had known him as lieutenant governor when I was in Pennsylvania.
Oh.
So we in the state of Pennsylvania, we had an understanding that there was a more depth to him than might first appear to be the case. And Josh Shapiro should have been vice president, but Kamala Harris decided she couldn't run with him because he was Jewish.
Yeah.
And excuse me, right? I mean, what on earth is wrong with you people?
Well, you know, the Republicans lost one seat in Congress this week.
I do.
Yeah.
Oh, I do.
Paula Stark,
deserved,
two-term Republican, neglected to file the proper paperwork, and a judge ruled this week that she is not eligible, and the only two candidates that are both Democrats.
Yeah. So
how's that?
The question becomes: do you get crazy or crazier?
Right.
So we all wait with bated breath to find out what the answer to that question is. But when we start looking at the way the Democratic Socialists have taken over the Democratic Party, at least the outer phalanx of it, right? Now we see Mamdani, we see AOC, and we see that Bernie Sanders is still at it. Of course, he's too old to make any headway on his own, but he could make the critical difference for somebody else. And AOC seems to be his preferred playmate there. You got to wonder if they're going to fumble the ball on the goal line and give it right back to the Republicans. I mean, we have two utterly incompetent parties right now who can't get out of their own way. And I'm looking forward to seeing which one of them screws it up more.
So they're both trying very hard.
They are. You got to guess? You think that, do you think the Republicans will lose the traditional number of seats in the House that the party in power typically loses?
Honestly, I think it's still going to come down to what happens in Iran. But the Republicans are running out of time to end that war. And if that war doesn't end, I think it's going to be a bad November for Republicans.
I think ultimately that's going to be the tipping point. And they have a president right now who, A, has no idea what to do next, and B, is utterly unwilling to walk away from the mess he created.
And no definition of winning.
Well, I don't think we had a definition of winning walking in.
Which means we couldn't win.
Right, so that we don't have one now, not terribly surprising.
How many times we'll have
disgusting.
How many times we'll have to learn this lesson, James?
Well, I wish I had an answer to that question, Wes, because you would think that Vietnam would have been sufficient. Well, then again, you might think Korea might have been sufficient. It's only because of Vietnam that we forget the cluster that Korea was. And then the Iraq adventure, which, frankly, changed my life for the better. I wouldn't have ever gone to Iraq to become dean of the American University had George W. Bush not involved us in a never-ending quagmire there. So on the one hand, I'm personally quite grateful. But if I could go back and change it, the benefit to one life doesn't hold a candle to how many lives were utterly ruined and ended. So I would go back and change it in a nanosecond. And I dare say I think President Bush might go back and change it too. One remembers that mission accomplished banner.
Oh, yeah.
On the naval ship, right? One of the worst ideas of all time. And how many times has President Trump now said, the Iranians can't wait to make a deal?
Yeah.
Well, if that were true, the Iranians would have made a deal.
Yeah.
They seem wholly uninterested, right? And the Iranians, like the Chinese, measure time in millennia,
right,
not in 2-year election cycles. So they're going to keep taking the punches that we send their way, because they know they'll still be around after those punches are gone.
Yep. Reminds you of Afghanistan. And this started, remember,
as
what, a 3-week war or 2-week war? What did he say?
This was a 2-week war, just like the Ukrainian war was for the Russians.
Yeah.
And Afghanistan was the Russian Vietnam. They decided to go in there and just set things to right. And what was it, over a decade later, they're still losing people?
Mm-hmm.
How long will it take people to learn the lesson that the minutes the bombs start flying, negotiations end?
Yeah.
You might not get what you want from the Iranians, but the North Koreans have proven that if you have a nuclear weapon, you're off limits. It is therefore in every nation's interest to develop a nuclear weapon.
Right.
So unless everybody gives up their nuclear weapons, which is not going to happen, everybody else will develop nuclear weapons. They'll lie and say they're not, but they most certainly will, because it's the only sensible thing to do.
Yep.
Am I making an apology for North Korea? I most certainly am not. This is just the reality of the politics of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
You have a nuclear weapon, you do not get bombed or invaded.
Yeah.
And there you go. I got one more, Wes.
All right.
And it's another one that just comes up as of yesterday. And it's a guy that I've taken some chunks out of in print, Antony Fauci. You might recall, other people might recall, that Phil Magnus and I wrote a pretty blistering article when we did a Freedom of Information Act request to get all of Fauci's emails.
Mm-hmm.
It took quite some time to get them. And when we got them, they were damning, because what they proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, was that what Fauci said out loud to the American public and what Fauci wrote in private to his contemporaries and fellow travelers and co-conspirators, if I may, were two radically different things. Now, Joe Biden came along and gave Fauci a blanket pardon. And I'm not here to speak about the pardoning power, right? The pardoning power is absolute for the president. That's just how it is. Now, that leaves open some questions, though. I'm not sure you can be pardoned for things that you might have committed. I'm sure that you can be pardoned for things that you've been convicted of.
Right.
And these are for Supreme Court minds to decide. I've got nothing to say on the matter. But Biden pardoned Fauci for anything he might have done, which I think, given current standards, means that Fauci is untouchable at the federal level. He is touchable at the state level, right? A president can't pardon state crimes.
Correct.
So state authorities can go after Fauci all they want. I don't know if that's a valid thing, right? I mean, this is going to take a massive lawsuit and hundreds of attorneys to comb through, so I don't know. But Anthony Fauci went before Congress, the Senate, yesterday, as we record this on July 30th, and invoked the Fifth Amendment 111 times while answering exactly 0 questions. Now, if he's been pardoned and thus can't be guilty, how on earth can he incriminate himself? You can only incriminate yourself if guilt is on the table. And yet, 111 times he said, "I do hereby invoke my Fifth Amendment right." Now, I want to be clear. I think every American absolutely 100% down the line has a Fifth Amendment right.
Sure.
Is he within his rights to assert it? He absolutely is. If I were called before the Senate to testify on anything, I would likely invoke my Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate myself, because I'm utterly convinced if the Senate felt like it, it could find a way to incriminate me with my own words.
Yeah.
This is like when the police say you have the right to remain silent. And you know you didn't do it. You can prove you didn't do it. And yet, if you open your stupid mouth before you get an attorney and go to court, you are going to be in trouble. So I'm of two minds on this. On the one hand, he's well within his rights to do it, and it might be the smart thing to do. On the other hand, he's presented himself as the only voice of reason and science in these United States about the COVID fiasco. And then when push came to shove, he decided he didn't have anything to say about it.
Yeah, you remember his quote interview with CNN 4 years ago. He said, "I'm going to do what I need to do, and that is cooperate fully because we have nothing to hide at all. I'll be very happy to testify before any congressional oversight committee." Well, that went out the window. But, James, I think a big part of the problem is the cameras in those hearings, and it doesn't matter which party's in the majority. Those are gotcha moments, and I agree with you. I don't know that I would do anything but plead the fifth if I were called in.
Yeah, I don't
Although
think so.
Fauci should be held accountable for what he's done.
Well, I don't think he can be, given what Biden did on his behalf. And I'm willing to just let it all slide, right? Were crimes committed? Without question. Phil and I proved it. And I'm about to recast that article and republish it in the next couple of days.
Good.
So people can get a fuller understanding of what he did once upon a time. And there's a couple of things here, right? Sometimes you're outside the reach of the law. That's just an unfortunate thing, given the way our system is set up. And our system is set up in such a way to keep the innocent from going to prison, right? The old saying from the English common law, better that 100 men go free than 100 guilty go free than one innocent man go to prison. And I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I think, a decent society does not imprison the innocent. And as a result of that, you will many times watch the guilty go free. Fauci is guilty. Of that, I have no doubt. I will offer the proof of that. I've already offered the proof. I'll do it again. And people can read that and come to whatever conclusion they want. But in the court of public opinion, Fauci is no longer a hero. And I think that, to him, is more of a punishment than a legal proceeding ever could be. Because he is a narcissist among narcissists, right? He is probably their king. And to knock a narcissist off the pedestal and say, no, Dr. Fauci, you're really not that big a deal. You're really not the savior of these United States and indeed the world.
Yeah.
You're just another jackass who abused power. I think that might be more of a punishment than anything a legal proceeding could offer him. So is it good enough? Probably not. Is it the best we're going to do? I think in all likelihood.
Probably. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. You got anything else, or has this been enough foolishness for 1 week?
I think that's a plenty for a week. What do you think?
I can't help but think we missed a bunch of things, but I do think that's
there's plenty
probably
out
enough.
there. That's the beauty of politics in America today. There's always one more.
There will never be a shortage of this kind of nonsense. And I have to tell you, it's been a joy. It's my favorite thing in the entire Harrigan week to pluck out the dumbest thing I can find and present it to the masses as the foolishness of the week. And there was this one time, a very well-known example, where we were running low on time and we decided to skip it. And the hate mail I got was epic. It was just epic. So hopefully this episode makes up for that shortcoming once upon a time. And I suspect we'll do this whenever Antony can't quite make it. Ant's on the road this week for his real day job, and given that pays money and this does not, it was an easy call for him to make. But as luck would have it, Wes was free to discuss all these idiotic things. And as the present connoisseur of foolishness, we got to get you a crown. As maybe if you're the connoisseur of foolishness, what we need to get you is a bib tuck into your shirt and a knife and a fork. But I suspect we'll be doing this again, and I look forward to it.
So do I.
Wes, my friend, it was great seeing you, and it was great doing this with you. We'll see you again real soon.
Thank you, James.
And remember, given the amount of foolishness which engenders anger without question, it's ever more important for people to be nice to each other. It doesn't take much. It really doesn't. And unless you work for American Airlines, I'm going to be taking my own advice. And it would be nice to everybody I come in contact with, even the wife, and we'll see if it makes a positive difference in the world. The people at American Airlines go right off. And Delta, here I come. Delta Airlines, if you would like to arrange a sponsorship for this podcast, be in touch. I'm real easy to find. Until next time, have yourself a lovely week.